smoke, dude.
I do. I'm a smoker. Yeah.
I can hear it. You sound like that sounded like a little bit of a smoker's. Oh wait, we're on there. We're on air. Like down, Shannon. We are. Are we rolling? Do I have that right, Shannon?
Yeah.
Are we? Okay, so let me do the intro. Now, nobody's here yet because I always write one on my phone and post it, and like 10 people are hanging out there right now watching, waiting for it to start, and then I have to go to my laptop to create it. So
Oops.
there's always confusion. There's like 10 people, nobody's here yet, but I'll still do the intro. So far on my channel, I've had all these atheists on, and there's been a common theme: boring white guys, boring white atheist males. And so I was thinking to myself, what can I do? What can I do to add some pizzazz, some razzle dazzle to my humble little channel? So I found me the share of atheism, the original good girl gone bad, ShannonQ. Shannon.
Gone bad. Stop it.
It's what it is, good. Shannon. Like, just tell the truth. No. But we'll get into the whole thing. Go ahead. Introduce yourself. Tell them who you are and why you became what you became.
Why I became what I became. I'm ShannonQ. I have a YouTube channel. Which is a recent occurrence called ShannonQ. I've been making videos since late May, I think. I have just under 5,000 subscribers, I think.
You've been making wait. You've been making videos since May, and you have just under 5,000. I've been making videos for 2 years, and I think I have like 70 subscribers or something. So okay, right there. Go ahead.
And I am also the co-host of the Heathen Hour podcast, and we have our own channel now called the Heathen Hour. I co-host with Godless Cranium. I am also a partner on the Apologia channel. I'm sometimes on the channel. Mostly I'm in the background of that channel. I'm on the Non Sequitur show pretty frequently. I hosted a talk series called Let's Talk About You with ShannonQ on Steve McRae's channel. I've done collaborations with, Vice Rhino, Professor Stick, Holy Kool-Aid, Genetically Modified Skeptic, and a whole host.
You did a thing with Drew?
I did, yeah.
What'd you do with Drew? I've never seen that. Is that?
Well, I had a minor part in it. It was a video he did on anti-theism. I helped him compile some research, and he used one of my quotes, and I read it for him on the show. But that's the only thing that I've done specifically with Drew. Okay,
cool.
Who's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, Drew's a good guy. He was on my channel, and you were supposed to have watched the video. And
I did now. I did.
Did you? Did you really? Okay.
I even commented on it. You didn't see me comment. I said I finally did it.
Yeah. Yes, I did see the comment, but I wasn't. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it went actually well. Drew is a very good. He's actually almost an ideal guest for a show like this because he's mellow, but he's very talkative. So you could just say like, and then what happened? And he'll go, well, and then I was there. He'll just go on. You just kick back.
That was a true story.
So when the last time when we were talking, we were on Stephanie's little channel, and we had started to go into, when did you actually turn atheist? Were you like in your 20s? You were an Anglican, right?
When I was in my 20s, I probably would have told you that I was an agnostic at that point in time. I wouldn't say that I really identified myself or realized I was an atheist probably until my 30s.
But you were starting some real questions at that time.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But I was very devout. I was an Anglican, and I went through some tumultuous times in my life. And
tumultuous times relating to
well, let's see, I was homeless. My stepbrother had just shot and killed our grandmother.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. I did not know that.
I had just left a long-term relationship that I was in. I was working 3 jobs at the time and putting myself through university. And I turned to my faith for I tried to delve into my faith a bit more for comfort, I guess, and support and answers and all the things that you turn to your faith for, and the opposite happened.
So, okay, so wow, that's a lot to unpack already. Okay, so you're how old at this time? In your early 20s, and your brother
Mid,
shoots?
yeah, I
Is
would have been in my mid 20s. I was
so
25.
how did you turn to your faith? I mean, what were you trying to do? You were trying to heal the pain, obviously, but
Yeah,
what's the process like?
I was, I guess, looking for to clear my mind and organize my thoughts and try to figure out a direction when your life all at once when your life comes to that kind of upheaval, you tend to either fall apart or look for ways to pick yourself up and put yourself back together. And I'm a very headstrong person, and I try not to allow myself to fall apart. Instead, I have kind of have a motto that, I've survived everything that I've gone through thus far. I can survive this too. But I was looking essentially for a path, the right path to take forward,
Uh-huh.
and some answers as to how best to proceed in that vein, and a better, best way to live my life, I guess. I was looking to try to figure out what the best way to live my life would be via um, initially turning to my faith, because
And
there's some.
you found your faith of no, I'm just going to assume,
Mhm.
as if I were an atheist interviewer, you found your faith of no comfort whatsoever, or very little comfort, correct?
It wasn't even necessarily comfort that I was looking for at the time, to be perfectly honest with you. It was
Okay.
um, 'cause there's not a lot that's comforting in the situation that I was in. It was more so to try to find a way,
Stabilize.
try to find a path, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Try a way
Stabilize.
to stabilize and figure things out.
Okay. Because I went through a very dark period too, but it was more drug related. It wasn't necessarily external outside circumstances,
Hmm.
which I'd imagine must have really messed with your mind because I gather, I don't know this yet, but I gather you thought you were living a good Christian life, therefore you should be somewhat immune from, outside destruction. Is
No,
that true?
no, no.
No, that's not true. Okay.
No, I never had that misconception that, living a good life meant that you were immune to bad things. Never.
So you didn't cry out and go in the situation where you found chaos. You did not go, God, why me? Why did you allow this? I was doing it. That wasn't something you went through.
No, that thought actually I don't think ever crossed my mind. No, because I believe very much in personal accountability and always have. Um,
Okay.
I've always said that you you are not responsible for the things that happen to you. The only thing that you have control over is how you react to them.
It's how you handle it.
That's your
Right.
responsibility. Your responsibility is how you choose to deal with the things that happen to you. Just so I don't think that anybody deserves good or bad things. Things just happen. Things happen.
Right.
You can't control external variables. Things happen.
Okay. Because in the video that you commented on, one of the videos I put out,
Hmm.
I used you as an example of someone who has had a
Yes, I
very
saw
stable
that.
life. And you write
I
this
was
thing
like,
like, no. No, I was homeless, and you didn't tell me the brother part, but you were like, you were homeless.
Mhm.
What? How long were you homeless for? What happened?
uh,
Couldn't find a
after,
home. Stupid.
yeah, well, no, not really. I had to leave my house, my parents' home, my mom and my stepfather's home when I was 18, right after I graduated high school. And I had some scholarships to go to the university. And I lived in a rural area in order to go to the university. And because of, to a certain degree, my situation at home, I had to go. So
Why? Because
I,
they kicked you out, or too much tension,
no,
or
goodness, no, 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 no. They wouldn't have, no, my mother would never have kicked me out. Never in a million
so
years. If I
you
asked
had
her
to
to.
leave.
Well, we lived in a rural area. Well, I'll leave it at we lived in a rural area. My stepfather's actually just passed away. He passed away in July, so I'm not going to go too far into
Oh well,
our
I'm
relationship.
sorry.
But he and I didn't get along very well. But so I left, and I was working 2, 3 jobs at a time. I was refereeing soccer games, and I was working at a bar. I worked at the Gap. I worked at I would take a million odd jobs because I had to pay for myself to go through university and also pay all of my living expenses at the
Right.
time.
So the premise of my video was correct, but the reason why we're still mysterious. I had you pegged as a together person, a generically together. Now I put it on being raised correctly. Obviously that wasn't it. So maybe we'll try to figure out what is it, psychological strength, would you say, or
I
the
don't
together
know.
part is fair, right? I mean, you
I
strike me
think
as
so.
very on the ball, right?
Well, I mean,
In terms of
I like to think so. I do my best. I've always had to be autonomous. So when you always need to be responsible for yourself, you take your or you can or should, I guess, take your life and your choices seriously. And you
right.
understand the implications of the choices that you make and the implications of the things that you do uh
Right. I guess
are
my
paramount.
wife has some of that because
Yeah.
she was had a very chaotic life and she's very
Yeah.
like unimaginable amounts of inner strength, like way more than most people. Um, so maybe that has something to do with it. Need, I
Potentially,
don't
yeah.
know.
I don't know. I guess I try to be an introspective person. Um, I think that you just when you go through enough, and I was a very bullied child too. I was relatively bright, I guess, and not attractive at all. I was, overweight.
What?
Oh goodness, no, not at all. Had like an eyebrow. I was fairly overweight. I was not one of the richer kids. I was very socially awkward. I had difficult times uh, figuring out how to interact with people when I was younger because I wasn't socialized particularly well. And yeah, so and I didn't relate to a lot of people because I was, I guess, I was fairly bright. And I just didn't relate to a lot of people that were my age. And so I got bullied quite a bit. And so
Wow.
I never really had stability ever. And I always, the only thing I ever consistently had would be my mom and myself because my dad left when I was born. Yeah, so I guess
Wow.
you just have.
I would never have guessed the bullying, and I would never have guessed that you started out. I would not have guessed that at all. So I had your raising pegged totally differently.
Interesting. Okay.
But
I
there are
wonder why.
similarities. My wife's father left when she was like 4, and that's a big deal with her. She can barely talk about it. Like it
Oh,
caused visible pain when it even comes up.
oh
Um,
gosh, yeah, I get that. My dad's still in my life. Like he wasn't in the home, but I saw him every other Sunday,
yeah,
and I
it's the
still
same
see
with
him.
her.
Yeah,
Saw him on weekends.
yeah,
And but they went with my wife is a little bit more like because they went from living. I probably shouldn't tell too much of this because she won't hear it, but she'd get mad if I did.
yeah.
But they went from a like really like upscale. He was a surgeon at Harvard,
Oh
and they had
wow.
this really big house in the richest place, the richest town in Massachusetts. I forget what it's called, Lexington. That's what it's
Okay.
called. Um, and then he leaves, and then her mom and her move to New York, and she's kind of living on her mom's salary at this point. It's a totally different change of life.
Oh
So it
yeah.
went from like it was like the good life was ripped out from under her to a certain degree, and it's still very painful, traumatic for her. I can tell.
Yeah, it would
Um,
be. It's a lot to deal with.
so you started getting into, let's jump ahead to you started doing your public atheism a couple of years ago with other people, mostly Paul
Uh,
and
no, it wouldn't be a couple years ago. It'd be a couple months. Maybe,
totally a couple of months.
yeah, probably. Well, it might even, I might be encroaching upon a year, maybe.
for the whole thing, even like being on Paul's channel and things like that?
Yeah, the first time I was on Paul's channel was I don't know, New Year's. I think it was New Year's. Like it was January. That was the first time I was on Paul's channel, I think. I think other than reading his comments for him, I helped him in the background probably starting last November. So probably November, December of last year. Yeah.
Wow, I had you pegged as like Miss Atheist, going all the way back to like
No.
10 years of atheist YouTube activism. You come
No, not
across
even a
as
year.
like you come across as like totally on the in crowd atheist leader of them. You lead
You're
those guys.
silly. I'm not a leader. Oh my gosh, you guys see it. There's not a hierarchy. That's crazy. I'm just, there's a group of us who definitely get along very well and have like minds and have gravitated towards each other because, we share interests and
Right, the
and we
top
do
shelf.
similar things and we enjoy exchanging ideas with one another. But that's as far as that goes. We just, we've gravitated towards each other because we found each other, mostly through
So when
Twitter.
did you start the actual atheist part of your atheist journey? Was it not
Like
that long ago?
when I would say
Where
I
you,
would identify as an atheist outwardly to people, or
yes,
when I would do it when I accepted it for myself, because those are different.
right. There's probably a space in between there. You probably
There's
accepted to yourself and went through a couple of years before you publicly
yeah,
identified.
yeah, that's about right. Publicly identified would be within the past year and a half.
Wow. My head just exploded. I swear to God, my head just completely exploded.
But what told my, like, accepted to myself that I was an atheist probably about 4 or 5 years.
And was that big in your landscape, your moral or spiritual? Was that a big thing for you?
At that point,
I finally
no.
crossed the Rubicon, and I'm no longer.
No, not well, yes and no. It wasn't big for me intrinsically, emotionally. Like I didn't have like a paradigm shift at that point because it was a slow burn, I think, for me. What
Right.
was difficult for me was the idea of publicly identifying. I spent a long time not, if people would have discussions about, religion or any other topic that, was tangential in any way to atheism or religion, I would kind of recuse myself from that conversation for fear of the aftermath of that proclamation.
Is it in your immediate environment? Is it very controversial? Like, is it?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, I live in a rural community, and just saying that you're an atheist immediately, you might as well wear a sign. Yeah, you might as well wear a sign that says "I'm not one of you." And even though, and I found that there's been shifts in people when they, I guess, find out that I'm an atheist. They go from being very cordial and open and friendly to being a little more closed off, probably because they have misconceptions. They don't realize that I'm exactly the same person I was before they knew that about me. But just receiving that tidbit of information somehow changes their mind, and that's
Why do you think that happens? Is it just public perception, or are they superstitious to a certain degree? Or you tell me, why do you think?
I don't. Well, I wouldn't presume to know an individual's mind without asking them themselves. So I couldn't say for sure in my personal life what it is, except for, the few people that I've had conversations with about it. The few people I have had conversations with about it, some of them were afraid that I was going to say something to their kids.
Okay, so they thought you would evangelize their children.
Right. Yes.
That's a bit more rational. I mean,
why is that rational? Should I be afraid that you're going to evangelize to my child?
Well,
if you were around,
you wouldn't of me personally.
But should I be afraid that Christians are going to evangelize to my child?
Wouldn't you be?
I'm not afraid of that, no, because he's going to be exposed to an entire world of things. My job as his parent is to help him navigate that. So it's not my job to control, like I can't control the external world. I can't. I just can't. My job is to arm him with everything that he needs to be able to navigate that well. So I do not fear him being exposed to any sort of religious ideals, nor do I fear that one day, because I don't raise my child as a, air quotes, atheist. I don't take him to church, but I don't say, we don't believe in God in this house.
We don't do it. He's like watching a Christmas special. Like, we don't do that here.
Yeah, that's right. We don't think Jesus is real. Yeah, exactly. Like he knows that, he's asked me and I say, well, buddy, Mummy doesn't necessarily think that it's real, but lots of people do, and it's okay. And people believe all different things all around the world. And one day, if you decide that that's what you believe, then Mummy will accept that. And if you ever wanted to go to a church and see what it's like, I would take you and we would talk about it. So,
okay. So one of the videos you made was on cognitive dissonance. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the dissonance about dissonance video. Yeah, that was a little while ago. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm assuming you were thinking of that in somewhat of for religious people in general, because you mentioned that when you were first talking about how it was big with you, that there were questions in the Bible that you felt like you couldn't answer, and you would go to this is what you said on the first time we were talking about this, and you would go to like authority figures in your church and stuff, and nobody had any real answers.
Right.
So was that big with you, cognitive dissonance, and do you perceive that in other Christians?
Okay. Well, I'll start off by saying that's a fair question.
Correctly? Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair question. Okay, there's a lot to unpack in the question though. So I'll start off by saying that that's actually not the reason I made the video. The reason I made the video is because I see that thrown at religious people friggin' constantly, and it's misused. So if I'd like to arm people with better communication skills. If they're going to be in this realm, I would like to see the discourse elevated. So I was making a video about that because I constantly saw it being thrown around willy-nilly without people really even understanding what it actually fucking meant. So I thought that it was a public service announcement more than anything. It wasn't. It's interesting that you would imbue it with that, because I
didn't. I was trying to get the subject on the table. Actually,
fair enough.
I remember the title. And I remember you talking about cognitive dissonance.
Sure.
So I wanted to start the conversation. I'm not saying that that's exactly what you were presenting it as. I just guessed. I don't remember it that way.
Fair
Go
enough.
ahead.
All right. Okay. So did I have dissonance? Yeah, probably to a certain degree, because that would be why I was pursuing answers to those questions, because I'm a reconciler. When I experience things that are dissonant, I don't go into denial. I don't
just roll with it.
I don't know exactly. I don't push them off. I go and I try to reconcile. I try to justify, I try to rationalize, and I try to reconcile. So I would say, yeah, it's absolutely fair to say that I felt dissonance. And what really deconverted me was grappling with morality. Grappling with morality is what was the linchpin that finally pushed me over the edge. I mean, there was a myriad of other things. I know a lot of people talk about, well, it's because of science. The atheists worship science. It really didn't have anything to do with the science for me. It had a great deal to do with morality, and I couldn't get anybody to reconcile the moral questions for me. And
right, but you were going to what, country priests and guys?
Country priests? No, I lived in the city then, actually.
Oh, did you? Really?
Because I was going to university at the time. I'm from the country, but I was out in the big city of Halifax back then.
Oh, cool! There you go, man.
So I went to a school chaplain. I went to some of the students that I knew at the school that had studied philosophy to talk to them about some of the questions, and most of whom were Christians and considered themselves, I guess, theologians. As much of a theologian as you are when you're, a 20-something-year-old philosophy student at university.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you do what you
Poser
can.
theologian. You call it a
Right.
poser theologian.
Or a future theologian, a
Yeah.
potential theologian, I guess. Yeah, I mean, you do what you can with the tools that are available to you. And, you know, I
Actually,
talked to
there's a famous quote by T.S. Eliot that my friend used to tell me all the time. He said, if you're 25 and you are not a poet, you're a young man who writes verse. You can't be a poet till after 30. I'm not sure if it's true, but
Interesting.
I get the point. It's got to be some lived experience in there. So go ahead. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so I guess I went to my reverend and I spoke to him. And as the journey went on, I mean, this all didn't just happen in a couple of days. I didn't get these questions and think to myself, I need to go get answers right now, and then run out and ask everybody I could find. I just, these are things I grappled with quietly to myself, in the confines of my own mind. And
right, but they would plague you to one degree or another.
Yeah.
Probably more intensely than your average Joe. Is that fair to say?
Perhaps. Yeah, I like to reconcile things, I guess. Maybe that's I think that's a relatively normal trait, wanting to reconcile things. The manner in which you go about doing it maybe is different to several.
Is that philosophical? Would you call it being more philosophically minded towards things like that?
See, I don't know. Maybe to a certain degree, although I'm no philosopher.
Right, but you're definitely more thoughtful than your average diss.
Yeah.
Just your average dingbat. Well, I've not, for example, with my wife. Okay, not that my wife is a dingbat or
She's
diss.
not your average. But that's okay. That's good.
No, she can be really, really sharp about some things, but cognitive dissonance is never something as a lived experience she would ever have. Because if there were dissonance to be had, she just wouldn't care. She wouldn't look. She wouldn't think about it. Do you know what I'm saying? A lot of people are like that.
I can't do that.
My mother, that's where I'm getting at. You're wired differently for whatever reason. What is that? Is that like more passionate about answers or what? I
like to always be sure that I am on steady footing and that I understand what's going on, so that I'm a bit of a planner. I like to plot courses and achieve goals. And in order to do that, you need to be armed with, I guess, accurate information and have a really good introspective understanding of yourself and how you operate and why. And I really wanted to understand myself. I wanted to understand how I fit into and interacted with the world as best I could, and how to do that better, how to interact with other people better, how to, achieve happiness, like all of the things that people want. I think introspection is a fantastic way to get there. Rational, critical introspection, and understanding why you believe the things that you do, and understanding what the things that you believe really mean and entail is an important part of that. So I don't know. I don't want to make any blanket assertions that other people aren't like that, because I've met so many people that are.
I hear you, but I'll paint a picture, and then you respond to the picture I paint. My mother. Take it away from my wife, because she'll kill me if she hears this. My mother.
That's right.
My mother is Mrs. like liberal Democrat, and I love my mom, but my mom, I learned this when I was like 15. You just don't. My mom doesn't want to hear the other side of the story. Mm-hmm. If you start talking, well, aren't the Republicans kind of right, or maybe lower taxes are? She'll want to hear it. It's not a question of she doesn't even want to go there. She doesn't even want to think it through. She doesn't even want to entertain. She wants to be black and white in her thinking. That's my lived experience of her. Now, you aren't like that, I don't think.
I try not to be.
Oh, okay. I think a lot of people are. Not necessarily faulting my mom. It has its good side. But I think a lot of people are like my mom. Go.
Yeah, sure. Well, all kinds of people are like all kinds of different ways, right? There's a certain subsection of any population that's going to have different personality traits. So, yeah, sure, absolutely. There's people that exist that are like that. But there's also a myriad of people who exist, a lot of people who exist that aren't like that. And just because you are like that doesn't mean that you aren't subject to change. Something can change you. People have paradigm shifts in their thinking all the time. You weren't always a Christian. I wasn't always an atheist. People have paradigm shifts in their thinking. It's just a matter of what can trigger that paradigm shift.
Yeah, that's a great question. What could trigger a paradigm shift in somebody? Any guesses? I'm not saying you could answer that in this YouTube, but that's really the key question.
Finding out something isn't true, or at least true in the way that you needed it to be in order to believe it.
Okay, go ahead, elaborate. I mean, I think I get it, but the people listening don't get it. They're just spell it out for them.
Right,
spell it out for them.
There are things that are true. There are things that are true. Truth exists. Truth is a thing.
Correct.
Truth exists. Now, just because truth exists, that doesn't mean that all of us can intrinsically know what is true. We do our best. We try our best to figure it out. We use the tools, like I said, the tools that are available to us in order to make an assessment as to whether or not something is true. If we decide that we believe that it is true, then we'll adopt it. We'll adopt it because we believe it's true. And at that point in time, it becomes incorporated into how we act, into how we think, into how we operate in the world, because we think it's true. Now, if you come up against information that makes you question the truth of that belief, you have a couple of choices. You can choose to ignore it, you can choose to deny it, or you can choose to critically assess it. Now, choosing to critically assess it doesn't mean that you're automatically going to discard the thing that you believe is true, but sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. Now, when I came up against it, I chose to critically assess it. I chose to critically assess it to the best of my abilities. And I had to accept, I had what I like to call an involuntary deconversion. I wanted to still be faithful. I wanted to still believe it. It was an intrinsic part of me. So it wasn't easy, but that's what changed my mind. I chose to critically assess it when I sort of accidentally, I guess, by circumstance, by a twist of fate, decided to turn to my faith and research it more in the hopes that it would give me some sort of comfort and guidance. And the opposite happened. What happened was when I decided to critically assess it, questions came up that I couldn't answer. Yeah, exactly. Now, I'm not naive or egocentric enough to think that I am the arbitrator of what is true. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think that I am. I think the probabilities are pretty low because I did everything that I could to try to hold on to it when I was critically assessing it. But maybe I am. I'm willing to admit that. I'm fallible. I'm a fallible human person. Maybe I'll change my mind again. I don't think that I will, but who knows? But that's what unraveled it for me, is that I was willing to critically assess something that I held to be true. Is that an adequate enough articulation?
I would say, judging from, I don't know, I would think that would be excellent. I would think that someone hearing that from an atheist point of view would be like 1,000 times amen. That's my guess. I don't know that for a fact.
What's your perspective on that, though? What do you think when you hear me say that?
I mean, I totally hear you as it's presented.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. It's very different than when Drew was talking, because
interesting.
Well, his thing, if you listen to his, this is why I started doing this and why I tried to make this is less, I mean, you don't feel apologetics at play here, right? This is more just like me trying to understand where you are at, right?
Yeah.
That's why I did this, because there's a lot about this I don't get. So one of the agendas here was just trying to find out where people are coming from. Exactly.
Craig Reed, Understanding Atheists. Now you have a playlist name. Craig Reed tries to understand the atheists.
Well, there's certain things I totally get. Like I can totally get someone who was raised fundamentalist, and they were told all these things like, the science books, don't read science, and the Earth is 6,000 years old, and then they have some process. And this is very common. Even happened to my mom, where they go to college and they meet things that contradict what they've been taught, and it starts to shatter.
Yeah, it's
Doesn't
easier to
necessarily mean
unravel when you're wound that tight, though. Like when you're wound that tight, you just need to flick that spring, and the whole thing comes unraveled with just one
right.
shake.
That's like the Hammurabi guy on your channel on Saturday. That was
Josh,
a cool.
yeah, Josh
He
is cool
said
guy.
that remember he went to college and he's
Seminary.
all wound up on the Bible is inerrant and for this reason, that reason. Then he started, digging things that unwound that, and the whole faith structure collapsed. Right?
See, but I am not that story. I believed in
No, not at all.
evolution. I mean, I was faithful and I was devout, but I'd realized as I got older that I had a lot of my faith dictated to me. I mean, I took my confirmation classes and I went to Sunday school and taught Sunday school and faithfully went to church, and I was an altar girl and I did all of my assigned readings and even some extra readings, but I was reading the Bible piecemeal as it was. I was reading passages that were suggested to me in hard times or happy times, like read this passage, it'll help enlighten you, or go look at this passage, it'll help you, have some thoughts about this particular experience in your life. I had never opened the goddamn book and read it cover to cover myself of my own volition. I never had, and I thought I knew it, but I didn't. I'd had my faith. I'd had my faith dictated to me. Right? Like I thought that I knew the Bible. I thought that I knew the tenets of my faith. And I realized that it had just the flowery pieces had been taken out, and they had made a patchwork out of those and sold that to me as my religion. And my religion, but it was based on a book that I hadn't read. And I'd only had pieces of it given to me. And I'd never taken it upon myself to figure out what that book actually said. And if my faith was based on that book, if that book is what is my faith, if there is no faith without that book, then, it should be a good book. And it wasn't a good book. It was a bad book. It was a really bad, it was a bad book. It was a
So
bad
you
book.
were, but you were an Anglican in the sense, because my perception of Anglican is kind of like an Episcopalian, in that you're fairly well educated. It's somewhat reconcilable with the modern world. Yeah. It's not like being it's not like being a Noah's Ark fundamentalist Christian.
Yeah, all of that stuff was allegory, except for when you're a kid. They teach it to you in Sunday school like it really happened, but it's more so like a fairy tale. And as you get older, if you have questions about it, like, hey, this doesn't make sense, or like, oh, no, that's all an allegory for, us needing to have faith in God, and that never really happened, and maybe it did happen to a certain degree, but the Bible was written by people, and people can be fallible. It could have been a local flood, and it all of that stuff was just parables or allegories.
Right. They tried. There was a partial project called liberal theology. Mm-hmm. And actually, it produced a backlash known as fundamentalism, where they tried to reconcile established truth. Like let's just say, for argument's sake, evolution is true. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but let's just give it to the scientists. Okay, so evolution is true, and a couple of other things are obviously true. So they tried to reconcile the Bible with established scientific truth, and it produced a backlash. It produced a backlash known as fundamentalism for reasons, because can you hear that? Do you hear those interruptions from my wife?
No. No.
Oh, no. Good. Okay. She's sending me messages, and the phone is announcing it. But if you can't hear it over the line, it's fine.
That's funny.
Wait, before I go into this further, do you know the epistemology stuff? Are you interested in it? Are you friends with them? Do you know
the street epistemology stuff?
Yeah, like Anthony.
Well, I know Dan. I know Anthony, and I know Dan. I've watched a couple of the videos, but yeah, like I understand the basic tenets of it, but it's not my bag. I don't. I
What,
like two-way dialogues, so I'm not. And yeah, not my bag.
okay, so what would you say is your bag in this thing, and how's that? How would you characterize that, and what's your bag?
I like to try to create more productive conversations around controversial and highly emotionally charged topics. So, one of the reasons that I entered into this forum is because I was looking to YouTube, I guess, for some sort of intellectual and emotional satiation or solidarity or some sort of, commiseration that I wasn't getting externally because I don't recognize anybody like me around me. Right. So I didn't
Right.
really have anybody to share ideas that were important to me with. So I looked to YouTube to a certain degree for that. And I found a lot of fantastic channels, but I also found a lot of channels that were just, about poning the Christians and,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
making,
yeah.
yeah. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I was like, wow, that's not
That's right. The
representative.
first video you did, I actually did a commentary on because I was like, that was before I knew you.
Yeah.
It was about having better dialogue or elevating the dialogue or something like that, some
Engaging in
such.
complex conversations is the first video I posted.
Right. And the premise was we need to have better, more productive dialogues with the Christians instead of just like shut them down and get in their face and antagonize and be emotional. Is
Yeah.
that fair to say that was the premise?
Yeah, that's a fair summation, I would think. And it's not even just about Christians. I try to be very careful not to use the word Christian, not to specifically say Christian in any of my videos, actually. I'm more familiar with Christianity because I was a Christian. So, if I'm speaking towards anything based on personal experience or some sort of anecdotal experience, it's obviously going to be that because that's what I know. But
Right.
in these conversations, it's not just atheists talking to Christians. Sometimes it's Christians talking to Muslims, or sometimes it's atheists talking to Jews. And sometimes it's, that these conversations take place in a myriad of forums with people of all kinds of faiths and none at all. And all of them could be better. They're either really pedantic or they're really antagonistic. It's difficult.
Really antagonistic. And
Yeah.
they talk past each other, which you brought up
Sure.
in your video,
Yeah.
where
Or they're so high level cerebral and pedantic that they're of no value to an average person listening to try to discern what they should believe or what they do believe or try to understand the topics. So there's a whole spectrum of things I think that could be done just, a little bit better in some circumstances. Some people are having fantastic conversations. Some people are just are really great communicators. There's a lot of people popping up that are great communicators and just aren't as antagonistic. And there's also, when you're an atheist, when you first come out, several people, a lot of the times, you're a little bit angry and you're looking for some catharsis. And
yeah, definitely.
sometimes watching somebody who's a little bit more, antagonizing and a little bit more, kind of funny and maybe pokes jabs. So sometimes that's a little bit of a release that maybe you might emotionally need at that time. Like that people respond to all kinds of different dialectic approaches. Like there's something of value to everybody in each of them. So I'm not even saying that those should stop. I just wanted to see more that I could relate to because that's the way that I respond to communication, and some other people may too. So, why not add my voice, I guess?
Yeah, I totally agree. But definitely I can see why some people would want to identify with the aggressive approach to a degree if you were raised a certain way.
Right.
I mean, I did totally, because I had a totally different high school experience than most people who were raised fundamentalists. And very hard for me to put myself to imagine high school as a fundamentalist Christian. It'd be torture. It'd literally be torture. I mean, it's just so, it's not necessarily that the faith part of it is wrong. It's just there are certain things that are so natural to a high schooler no, you know, you can go overboard, obviously. Me and my friends
Right.
did. But there are certain rites of passage and certain things that, you know, the first time you go to the field and drink beer with your friends and things like
Yeah.
that, that cause so much angst um, growing up to these people. You know, even stupid things, harmless things like watching a slasher flick or something,
Yeah.
where those lines get preached to them as this is really dangerous and terrible. Don't do this, you know. So I can understand needing to feel some release and have atheism in that sort of circumstance feel like freedom. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, to a lot of people, I think it do. I think that's a fair analogy that it feels like, especially if you felt like you've been under a boot for a really
Yes.
long time and weren't able to fully instantiate yourself. Like you weren't able to be the person that you wanted to and felt like you were, wanted to be and felt like you were.
Well, but
Because
even explore, because when you're a kid, when you're
mm,
16, you should feel like the world is safe.
mhm.
Um, Not to the point where you're insane like me and my friends were, but to the point where
Not that you're
I
invincible.
right. I mean, there's definitely a good side to fear, but it's overused in a religious context with young people to like produce a result that isn't necessarily healthy. Is that fair to say? It's not necessarily healthy. You don't want kids afraid of everything,
Right.
afraid of everything they do under the sun. Like one girl was talking about going to a New Kids on the Block concert.
I
I can
love
think of
them.
nothing.
God, I love them.
Well, okay. So we're gonna agree to disagree. We're gonna have our first fight,
I
Shannon.
said
No,
love. I love them. I love them.
I heard present tense. I heard I love them.
No love.
I got okay, past tense.
I would like
By the
eight
way,
though.
what's the problem with share of atheism? I thought that was good billing.
I feel well, if it's like 60, late 60s, early 70s share, then maybe, I guess. I guess.
Oh,
I'm a she's not my musical taste. I'm more of I'm a Bob Dylan, Janis Joplin, Amy Winehouse, Jimi Hendrix,
oh,
like
cool. So you're still
Ray
like classic rock.
LaMontagne. Yeah, God, yeah. And well, like in contemporary, I really like Ray LaMontagne. I like Leonard Cohen. I love Leonard Cohen.
Okay,
Um, I've just
I'm cool with that. The share analogy was just big star of atheism.
you're that's
Like
adorable. I'm not a big star of atheism. There is
the
no
big
thorn of
star. Yes you are. Own it, work it, own it.
work.
Just be,
Did you just go all RuPaul on me there, Craig?
yes, I did.
You
As a matter
did
of fact.
work it. You better work.
I mean, Amy Winehouse doesn't work in that context. It wouldn't make any sense then. You'd be like, wait, Amy, she's like the crackhead of atheism.
That's right. No, that's fair. I see what you're doing. Yeah.
Did you see that documentary, by the way? Amy, that movie
I
came out?
did. Oh my gosh. I felt so sad for her. Like
Yeah, it was pretty intense.
she's such a talent too. Oh my God. Like it's insane what drugs and alcohol can do to a person.
Well, in her case, it seemed like it was almost like she had reconciled herself to it and it was totally
Yeah.
inevitable. And she was like, you know,
Yeah,
I'm going
she
to be
just
one of the 27. And she was the 27, right?
yeah.
She was in the club.
Yep. It was just
Wow.
it was too much like yeah, but and she was in such crap relationships too. Like she was just surrounded by bad people and her dad, oh my God, her dad with like bringing the cameras when she was on vacation, like
Yeah.
just completely capitalizing on the fact that she had some fame for ugh, it was repugnant to me. I couldn't ever do that to my kid. Like I would want to do everything I could to protect his privacy in that situation so that he could have a life.
Well, I'm sure that's a fairly common theme in the self-destructive celebrity. You find that the parent is more sycophant and,
Yeah.
secretly not on the side of the child's development. I'm sure
Yeah.
that's
Not acting in
you're the
their best
psychologist,
interest,
right?
acting
You're
in
the
their own best
psychologist. I'm sure there's even a name for that, the narcissistic parent syndrome or something like that,
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm
right?
not actually I'm not a psychologist by trade, by the way.
Right,
That's
but
a
you went to school for
oh
it,
yeah, I have
or
an honors degree in psychology. Yeah.
okay, so there you're the psychologist. It's like
And
I
I'm in
said.
I'm in an adjacent field, I guess, but I'm not a people seem to think I'm a therapist. I'm not. I
Well,
studied
because you have that sort of persona. That's sort of like, let's talk and
I like talking.
feel, shall we? Let's open up the lines of communications and just kind of, let's see where we feel at the end of it. You know, that type of.
Well, I studied perceptual cognition and communication theory, and I did my thesis on. Actually, I've never talked about my thesis presentations before. On impression formation, on the effect that perceived control over the direction of a conversation has on impression formation for an interlocutor.
Weird. Explain that. The perception of the explain it, because that actually sounds interesting.
So I had a hypothesis that if you, like all things being equal, if you perceive that you are the person that's in ultimate control of the direction of a conversation that you're having, your assessment and perceptions of your conversation partner are going to be more favorable in those instances.
Amazing. Now, I mean, I can actually already tell you there's truth in that. That's part of like, well, it's, I don't know if I feel like, but there's definitely reality that in terms of when you are having somebody on a show and asking the questions like I'm doing right now, versus when you go on a show and they get to ask the questions.
Right.
I don't know about the perception of you, but I feel 100 times safer this way.
Oh, asking
Does that
the
make
questions.
sense?
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, you would, because you have control. But it's in, do you... So, well, I'll give you a little bit of my research model. So in my research model, this is going to be so boring. It's really boring. Okay, so in my research model,
do it in a like abbreviated version. It's actually interesting.
Okay, so
do it in an abbreviated version, and
so
then it'll be interesting.
We had two groups, right? So we had and then a control. Now, in the control group, you watched a video where like you read a preamble, and the preamble essentially said, you know, like you're going to the grocery store and you run into a neighbor. Like there had to be just sort of a tertiary acquaintance, just like somebody that, you know, you knew Dave because you waved hi in the morning, but you really didn't have any sort of high level interactions with him. But, you know, you knew him to see him, that type of person.
Right.
So in one group, you'd walk in and Dave would just say hi and you'd say hi, and it would be a normal sort of interaction, and you'd carry on with your day. And you were watching a video of Dave. So you went into a room and you watched a video of the interaction, and you like the preamble said, you said, "Hey Dave." So you start the interaction. You said, "Hey Dave." And then there's 3 different videos. One video, you say, "Hey, Dave," and then Dave goes into a diatribe about, you know, something going on in Dave's life. And another video, you say, "Hey, Dave," and he says, "Hi." And the last one, you say, "Hey, Dave," and he says, "Hey, how are you doing?" Like that sort of thing, right? And then there was another, then it would stop and you would read another preamble that said, "Okay, this is what happened after that." Like but it was the same in all 3 groups. So after Dave said, "Oh, I have this horrible thing that happened," or whatever, you would read a preamble and it said, "Okay, you said, oh, Dave, it's, you know, it's really nice to see you. I hope you have a great day." And like that was the same in all 3 groups. And it went on for a little bit. In one, you can see, obviously, one is just like a blah, blah, blah interaction. Hey, oh, I hope you have a nice day. Hope you have a nice day too. And the other one, it's, hey, Dave. And the person's like, "Oh, how are you doing? Tell me about your day." And you say, "Oh, well, you know, blah, blah." Like all things being equal, the group where Dave was talking about himself,
right?
People liked Dave less.
Dave's an arrogant jerk. Dave's kind of a jerk.
Even though everything else was completely controlled. Like it's the same actor. It's the same. We tried to keep cadence the same. So tone of voice the same. between the three. Like the only real difference, like I was exaggerating it in my example, but like if all things kind of remained equal, we tried to control that. Controlling for extemporaneous variables is very difficult in psychology research. And I mean, this is just like an undergrad thesis, but yeah, it turned out like there was like a full standard, like more than a full standard deviation difference on a skewed distribution. Most people found medium Dave great. Like medium Dave was fine, whatever. We like Dave. Dave's still cool. People found Dave that talked about you better than medium Dave. They liked Dave that talked about you the most. And
right,
Dave that talked about himself, no one liked that Dave. Everybody thought that Dave was a bit of a dick. And everything else was
totally lines up with, if you see those, like, you know, those YouTube videos, like how to make people like you or how to be more charismatic. There's always the premise always is, if you ask people questions and you're more interested in them, they're going to like you immediately. And if you're, you know, I mean, that's almost like a no-brainer, because everybody wants to talk about themselves.
And there was another group. There was another group that because you have to control for a lot of things, where it wasn't about the people, it was just about innocuous conversation. So same sort of principle, exact same scripts, like for your preambles, exact same scripts. Only the middle control was the same. Hey, have a nice day. You have a nice day. The other two groups, it was just a matter of who controlled the conversation in those groups. So this was kind of like the control variable. Like the first group was like the baseline. This is the actual hypothesis variable that we were testing. And in this group, instead of talking about himself, it was just a matter of who was asking the questions. So either you asked Dave how he was doing, or Dave volunteered the information. But in this group, the script was the same. There was the middle group that was high, whatever. Then there was two other groups. Only the preambles were different. In one group, you asked Dave, "Hey Dave, how are you doing today? Tell me what's up." And Dave would say something. In the other group, you just said, "Hey Dave, how you doing?" And Dave just told you. The interactions were exactly the same, right? The only difference was the preamble, whether or not you initiated whatever Dave said. This was freaking years ago. Whether you initiated what Dave said, or whether Dave just decided to volunteer the information. But what Dave said in both groups was the same. Whether you asked him or he volunteered it made a huge difference. Huge difference in your impression of Dave. Huge difference. Even though everything else was controlled for and was the same.
Now, is there an analysis is there a theory that you came out with that tells us why? With the second one? The first one's obvious. Dave is a selfish idiot.
Well, it's all part of this. Dave's a selfish idiot. It's all part of the same.
Stop talking about yourself. What about us? Everyone's like, what about us?
Well, you have to you want to have multiple data sets when you're assessing these types of things, right? So that's essentially like a baseline data set, just to prove, that's like proof of concepts, I guess. And then the second part was my hypothesis that, this is proof of concept, like that if he's going to talk about himself, then you're not going to like him. The second part is it just because he talks about himself? Or is it because you don't have any control over whether or not he's talking?
You can't turn him off when he's talking about himself. You can't press a button and go, okay, shut up.
Yeah. Or you don't, or whether or not you even asked. Like if all other things being equal, and the only difference is whether or not you asked him for the information or he volunteered it. Why would you assess him differently if everything else about the interaction is the same?
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me, though, just given human beings. You feel like you have more, at least an illusion of control or something like that. You feel safer if it's up to you to initiate, right?
I don't know if it's always necessarily safer. But that's interesting, though. My idea was, and it would need to be tested further, this is just an undergrad research study. So my idea was that people want to have control over situation scenarios, and that extends to their interactions. So if you feel as though somebody is starting to engage into a diatribe and you didn't ask for it,
Right.
Like,
You have no
then
control.
you have no control over that situation. You are subject to that situation instead of the person who created that situation. And that
Right.
makes a
Hence
big
not as
difference in
safe.
your
Hence not as safe.
yeah,
That's where the safer.
interesting.
Did you get a C? Did you get a C or did you get an A?
Did I get a C? I had my ending GPA was 3.7, I think.
Oh, rocking. All right.
No, well, it's not a 4.3, but
Well,
I got
mine was a
A's.
two. Mine was like a 2.5 or something. I don't even know
There you
what I got.
go. You probably
I was on the
passed.
five. I was on the 5-year plan.
Well, it took me I graduated when I was almost 30. After I was pregnant when I did my thesis.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. You had the whole. Okay, so there was the whole history.
Yeah.
Wait. So go on with the. So what was the final analysis? Because you have control, you like the situation better.
I
Correct.
never got to I never got to finish my thesis. I never got to finish it. I had Blake. Oh, sorry, I had my son.
Ah.
I had my son. So I got to start it, but I never got to finish it. So I had to take 3 extra courses because I would have had to be there all day and all night and I was breastfeeding. So I ended up having to take 3 extra courses in order to be able to still have my my major and to still have my honors designation. I had to take seminar courses where I was essentially critiquing theses because I couldn't finish this. I couldn't finish the research, which sucks.
Wow.
I always wish that I
Yeah.
would have been able to finish it, but I didn't. I didn't get to do it. I went to the seminar courses, and I had somebody assigned. I actually had professors volunteer to to uh, to work with me, and I had everything set up, and we'd started collecting data, and I couldn't finish it because I got pregnant. So I did 3
Wow.
more courses while I was breastfeeding and pregnant, and
Wow.
I finished it that way. I finished it that way. I took the extra courses.
So what else? What's the other thing in the conversations with people? The heat is a big deal. Taking the heat out of controversial subjects. I find I shifted gears back to what we were talking about.
Yeah, sorry. We talked about my research, and I got all derailed. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's totally fine. But I want to get back to in a controversial subject like religion, right? Let me run this by you and see what you say. People have individual trigger points, right? If you say a certain thing, someone's going to like trip out for what appears to be no reason, but there's a really good reason to them. You just don't know what they are. And religion, politics, they all have those trigger points, and you can say them without even knowing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, certainly, absolutely. People have hot points. People have hot buttons. Yeah.
Right, but the reason why these particular types of if let's say we're talking about Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, if you just talk and you don't know the person, you're going to say something that pisses somebody off without even intending it necessarily. You know what I'm
Because
saying?
people get really entrenched in ideology, like really, really, really like dogmatic about it.
Okay, what's the root of that, or talk about that? That's what I was trying to get at. Go.
Because people like to be right. People really like to be right. People like to believe that they've already made the best decision,
Even if it's not true, and
even
then
if it's
defend it.
yeah, absolutely. Well, they don't defend it because people don't find out something isn't true for the most part. I mean, there's always outliers. So nobody finds out this isn't true and says, you know what, screw it. Not only am I going to believe it, I'm going to get pissed off when anybody else even questions it, even though I know it's not true. That's not the way people operate. People continue to hold something to be true, but they can hold on to something by the nails, essentially, even though it can be teetering, right? Like it can be teetering, and that's a scary place to be. Like that, being on that pivot point is a scary place because you don't know which side you're going to land. When you're in the balance like that and you don't know
Uh-huh.
which side you're going to land on, holding the steady course that you're familiar with is a lot. That's a lot easier row to hoe than 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 tipping it over and having to figure out what happens after that. I mean, with the
Interesting. So
politics,
is that I mean, so is that what you think happens with like a fundamentalist when they start digging into their doubling down on their talking points because they are getting more insecure that those talking points are not correct? Is that
Potentially.
what you're saying?
That could be some of it. I think it's more nuanced than that, though. I don't think that it's just one thing. I don't think that you can just say that's the only reason that people get entrenched or get upset or get, heated when they're in these types of discussion. You're also carrying the baggage of the history of every other discussion that they've had up until that point.
Right. Well, that's what I was thinking of. Okay, those are type of triggers that kind of make rational sense.
Yeah.
You just don't know where they are. That's why my mother is Democrat teen, period, and doesn't want to hear contradictory information because she wants to be a loyal. In a way, it's a good thing. I know that sounds strange because she can be really dogmatic, but it's sort of harmlessly dogmatic. But she's a team player. She doesn't want to. She doesn't. She's a bit
of a tribalist. Yeah. Well, it sounds like she's a bit of a tribalist. Like that's her team. Like don't.
Right, but in a positive way, if that's possible. Not all the negative connotations. There's a lot of negative connotations to tribalism, and we should actually go deeper in that because that's the big thing right there.
Yeah.
Because the tribalism is they even did. You read the Haidt book, right?
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, The Righteous Mind. Great book. Really good.
Totally awesome book.
Yeah.
But the tribalism seems to be innate. And I actually was talking about that in one of my videos. Like, I don't think it's unique to religious people. And maybe religion exploits it. But like, I remember in my town, we would go fight the Dobbs Ferry kids. Why? Because they're from Dobbs, from Dobbs Ferry. They suck. And we never actually go fight them for real. Right. They're from Dobbs Ferry. We're from Hastings. What do you mean, why? They suck. They're from Dobbs Ferry. That's so innate. It seems like when you get a group of people rallied around whatever flag, they tend to all of a sudden, it doesn't seem unique to religion as far as I'm concerned. But go ahead. You tell me. You tell me you're the guest. You straighten me out.
Oh, great. Sorry, I made the mistake of looking at your chat for a second. I'm not going to do that again.
Why? They're freaking out? What are they doing? Stephanie's saying.
No, I wish Stephanie was in there. I love Stephanie. I think Stephanie's out partying right now. She's having a great time. She's out. She's out on the town. Of course, looks the Twitter. She's on vacation. Yeah. So tribalism isn't something that is unique to religion. Obviously, tribalism is something that's, I think, an evolutionary trait. Especially like you read The Righteous Mind. Of course, we developed in social groups because it was beneficial to our survival. So we were able to carry on because we were able to form cohesive and cooperative groups. So,
right, but loyalty within the social group is actually a really good quality.
Well, of course, if you're competing for resources, sure.
Right. If you're not loyal to your clan, you're no good. You're not helping your team.
Good. You weren't good though. Like I think a tribalism is something that was beneficial when we were competing for resources. Sure. But I think that it's a vestige to a certain degree. I don't necessarily know that on an individual basis, there's to a certain degree, like protecting your family. I think that form of, tribalism is definitely beneficial. But when you're dogmatically tribalistic and you're defending your team, even when your team is doing things that you might consider reprehensible, it's no longer beneficial, right?
Right. Well, yeah, but nobody. I'm talking about like a healthy, lived hypocrisy, not insane hypocrisy. Not like
not crazy business.
Yeah. She's not saying like the Democrats right or wrong, and they're like murdering townspeople or something. Like they're Democrats.
They're not.
It's okay.
I don't know what happens in America.
Yeah, but it's very different. It's very different than Canada. Canada's like. It's really
gleaning.
Do you actually do? This is a weird side question, but do you actually know the inner workings of American politics as a Canadian? Do you know like Democrats, Republicans, and how that all plays out? A little bit, right?
Well, yeah, a little bit. I mean, I'm kind of a weird hippie though. Like I don't even have cable. So I don't really follow. I don't watch the news networks. I don't even own a microwave, Craig.
And you're listening to Dylan songs, and you have no TV, and you're like,
I have a TV. I do have a TV. There's just I don't have cable. There's no television channels on my TV. I can stream stuff to it if I want to.
Right. Okay. So you know who Donald Trump is, but you don't know.
Oh God, yeah. That's hilarious to me. And I know that you're right now about to potentially confirm a judge named Kavanaugh that may or may not have raped somebody 30 years ago.
Right, but you don't. So you know the basics of the stories, but you don't know the inner mechanisms of the
Oh goodness,
Democrats. No. Okay,
I reserve my mental space for not American politics.
Okay, so we were on tribal dogmatic thinking. Dogmatic thinking is yes, it's usually wrong, but there's levels where it's harmless or at least potentially benign. Is that fair to say? Or
dogmatic thinking, there's levels where it's potentially benign
or harmless. Everybody does it. Everybody's doing it, Shannon. You're picking on Christians. Everyone's doing it.
I'm not picking on Christians.
No, I know.
I'm not picking on anybody. That's a weird thing. Like I've always said, like a million times, I don't know how many times I have to say it, that I will defend to the death everybody's right to hold whatever religion they so desire. I think that it would be preferential on an individual level if people didn't have to hold on to that and defend it and incorporate it into their thinking and fit everything into that box and try to conform the information and comport the information that they receive to jam it into a pre-existing ideology, and they were free to do whatever the information allows or requires. If you want to be religious, sure, great, awesome, do it, fantastic. I will defend to your death your right to do that. I just don't think that it should be imposed upon others at all. Now, and also I don't think that I should have to shut up about the fact that I don't believe it. Right? Like, I feel like we can have respectful conversations from differing perspectives. You and I can believe very, very different things and enjoy each other's company. It's possible. It's really possible to do that.
It's totally possible. I don't actually agree with my wife on anything about politics.
And you like
about
her?
Politics.
Yeah.
Well, no, about politics, we don't agree at all, and we never fight about it. But part of the reason, and I'll run this by you, part of the reason I think we don't fight is I know all the trigger points. Right. Like, I'll mess with her mind, and I'll say things almost daily just to bug her. I'll say stupid stuff just to like weird her, just to get her annoyed. But she knows I'm doing it. It's like a game we play. I'm like, wow, Jen, the Democrats are on fire. You should have seen them today. I was like, Chuck Schumer was nailing it. He had this big speech. And she's like, and she'll be like, you're such a moron. You're such a...
That's awesome.
But it's like a ritual. We have found, having completely opposing ideologies, okay, we have found the space where we can actually agree on a lot, and we never quarrel about it because we talk about the stuff we agree upon within the opposing ideologies. Like you and I, for example. Yeah. You're still an atheist, right?
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. All right. Still an atheist.
Certain.
Okay.
I haven't been converted yet.
Like Kalam. Have you considered Kalam?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to try harder.
All right.
Do things have a beginning? I'm not sure. Give me a sec. Does everything that exists have a beginning?
Wait. I was making the point. What was I saying? What were we talking about?
We were talking about how you can have very different.
So you're an atheist, and you're still an atheist. Even you've been on the channel for an hour or so. You're still an atheist.
Yeah.
But you and I, there's a lot of space in between. I am a Christian, and you are an atheist. There's a lot of space in between that if we were to hang out with each other over long periods of time, we would just naturally start talking about where we agree.
Sure.
About like how YouTube channels should be run and who's got cool channels and why they're interesting. And the way that person, like Cy 10 Brugenkate's 2 and 10. So this,
I like Cy,
that's how. Well, he's nice, but you sat with him for an hour. I was going to get into this later, but we can start. What's your take on his? This is my take, and you tell me.
Okay.
His ideas are potentially interesting as ideas or theoretical concepts, but does it work as he was trying to like do apologetics with you, right? It's not convincing at all.
Yeah, that frustrated me a little bit because he and I talk. We still talk, actually. I like Cy. He really he believes it. Believes it. Like I've heard people say that Cy, doesn't believe it or puts on it. He believes it. Like Cy he's for reals. And
right. He definitely believes it.
He has a good sense of humor too. Like he's a funny dude. Like I do my best to try to get to know people as people and not judge them based on their ideas. Like I try not to have misconceptions. I try. I mean, I'm human. I try. But his apologetic, the presuppositional apologetic, frustrates me because of the presupposition. Because you're arguing from the point that all of these things have to follow from a God existing. Otherwise, they can't follow. That they can't exist at all, right? Like logic can't exist. But it can though if it's an emergent property of. Well, no, it can't. Why? Well, because God. It's like, well, this is frustrating and circular.
Okay, but that's where it went exactly. When he starts doing it in the context of a conversation, it starts to become shtick. It starts to become just trying to. Right. He's just trying to show as theoretical concept. It's potentially very interesting, right? Or no? I mean, if you're not interested, no. But
well,
it's potentially
it would be if instead of being on the defensive, I wish people were less on the defensive and more would, kind of follow through their reasoning.
Well,
because I'm open to change my mind. I'm willing to, if I'm open to change my mind, but being preached at and barked at isn't a way to do it. And I'm fairly certain I won't. Like, let's be clear. I'm fairly certain that I won't. I've been exposed to a lot, especially in the realm that I'm in, and it's like nothing's done it yet. But if I'm going to be honest, like all ideas should be open to criticism, and that includes mine. I don't deserve to hold positions that aren't open to scrutiny, and that's not an easy thing to say or do. But it's a
right. But within the context. Okay, but within the context of you being atheist, there's a lot of not sacred space. There's a lot of stuff that we could talk about that you would be like open to, like, and I get that about you, 100%. I'm sort of the same way with Christianity. There's a lot of stuff you could talk about with Christians that I wouldn't bother me in the slightest.
Right.
Where I'll step back from some of the conversations because I sense that they're going to be counterproductive right from the jump. It's just going to be a stupid contest. It's going to be intellectual maneuvering for no good reason, right?
Yeah, Sorry, Craig.
With no what?
With no productive outcome, because it's all just a matter of who can bark their ideas the loudest and then feel like they won that conversation. Conversations shouldn't have a winner.
Exactly. And that's what they were saying when Cy was on your channel. Someone was going, Cy is killing her. And I was like, I really don't think she's viewing it as a contest. I mean, that's a dumb way of, I didn't think you did.
It was the most polarizing thing. It was so funny. I don't watch the chat when I'm in conversations.
Yeah, I don't either. I can't. I'm focused. I can't.
Because you're not paying attention, right? So I wasn't watching the chat while I was talking to Cy at all. But I had to look after, and also there was people that I knew that were in there in the chat room while it was going on,
right.
And they were like, "Wow, people really thought that was like a debate or a fight," and I was like, well, "I just don't. That's not what I do." And people were trying to say, like, if you knew Shannon, you would know that she's not trying to beat him. I was just trying to get a better understanding of how he thinks. I mean,
right, but he didn't really let you do that because. He's got
a script. essentially
Okay,
that he
but
runs.
yes, and in the context of a debate, yeah, that's actually potentially very powerful or
Sure.
useful.
Not in a
Um,
conversation.
no, it's stupid. It's totally stupid in a conversation, and it's stupid on both ends. Like I don't say it to my Christian peers, but if we were having this conversation right now and someone started interrupting with, now is a good opportunity for me to press the case that God exists, it would actually shut down the conversation. It's not organic to the conversation.
No.
It's obnoxious out of context. Correct?
Yeah, no, that is, yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Like if I started that, like if we're having a good chat right now, you and I, and
Right.
it's a nice organic conversation. If I interjected right now and I was like, "Well, why do you believe in God? Did you read this Bible passage? Have you looked at this?" And
Right,
but
exactly. It'd be
people
so
fucking
annoying.
do that all the goddamn time, though, Greg.
I know that. That's why I
Oh my
pick and choose.
Jesus.
I pick the atheists to come on my channel, the ones that I think are going to be cool and not necessarily do that. None of them have done it so far. Because Cirrus doesn't do that. You just,
No,
or Drew. Drew doesn't do that at all.
no. They
It's
just
not
like
appropriate, right? And then you ask them about their beliefs, and they'll answer questions.
yeah.
Um,
We're just people. We're just
right,
people.
but part of it is the way Twitter is set up. With you don't really engage that much. It's polarized in the sense that there are definite sides. Like
Oh
I'm
yeah.
the Christian, you're the atheist, and there's definite team play involved to a certain degree.
Mm,
But when you're having
sure.
the conversation should be just organic, talking about whatever aspect comes up. And then you don't look for an opportunity to, here's the part where they call it Jesus smuggling, and that you didn't watch the Jordan Peterson debate yet, did you?
Oh, I watched bits and pieces of the one that I think, the one with Douglas Murray, which I feel like might have been in Ireland or
So yeah, there's one in
mm,
Dublin that's
yeah.
really good with Douglas Murray, and there's
There's one in
three.
Vancouver.
Vancouver,
I didn't see Vancouver.
yeah, they're all good. All three of them are really good.
Yeah, I was listening to it as I was going to sleep though, so I didn't. That's because I'm a weird loser nerd, and I listen to debates and crap like that as I'm lulling myself to sleep.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
mean, I've listened to all three. So if you're a loser nerd, I'm
I
like,
am. I'm a loser
the
nerd.
nerd. I'm like the nerdy.
What do you think
I'm
of
like,
Jordan Peterson, Craig? What do you think of him?
I get the criticisms because
Okay.
he's used to being erudite and a college professor. A
Yeah.
college professor is a certain type of position. So when he doesn't know something or when he's on a weaker point, he'll just kind of use a lot of verbiage, cite a lot of important sounding references, and just kind of fudge his way through it.
Okay.
So with the criticism, but the essential point that he's making, the pro-religion point that he makes, that's the core of his argument, I think is excellent. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And it's very, very refreshing for me, the Christian, to watch him talk with Sam Harris, and they're completely peers in terms of education, erudition. There's nothing Sam Harris has that Jordan Peele lacks. It's not like watching Ray Comfort.
Yeah, no kidding. That's not a fair or adequate representation of what most Christians are like. Like I was never in the Ray Comfort, Ken Ham vein of okay, like
Right,
that
but who outside of Jordan Peterson, who's making a defense of a theocratic defense that's on that level? Almost nobody.
well, well, gosh, what's his name?
You
What can I
can be
remember?
honest. You don't think
Craig,
William Lane?
William Lane Craig. That's
Craig
who I was
Reed.
going to say.
Craig Reed.
Craig
Craig Reed.
Reed.
Yeah, I
It's Craig
agree.
Reed.
I agree.
Craig Reed's doing it.
I
William Lane
agree.
Craig. Well, William Lane Craig is articulate and educated. J.P. Moreland's actually somebody interesting to listen to as well.
I don't know him. I'll check him
Okay,
out. That's
because he talks about neurology, I find him interesting. I just got kind of turned on to him. Somebody suggested him to me the other day. I'm still wrapping my head around his arguments a little bit because he's a bit pedantic and cerebral in his arguments, and he uses a lot of really difficult to connect analogies. Like one of them is about, he talks a lot about the mind body problem, right?
okay.
So he's the case for the soul kind of guy. But
Okay.
he incorporates neurology into it, and is intriguing to listen to. There's a couple of things that I find really, really interesting to listen to because I can't quite fully reconcile them. Like, I feel like there's that neutral territory where, because of what you believe, you would probably fall on one side, and because of what I believe, I would kind of fall on the other side, just
Right.
because neither of us really know. So we're both
Right.
looking at the evidence from our own individual perspective. So the
Right.
soul is one of those things for me. I, especially having a background in, I know a fair bit about cognition and neurology. I mean, more than the average person, but not as much as a neuroscientist.
Right.
Right? Like, let's be fair. I have limitations there, but probably a bit more than the average person. And I look at it and I think to myself, well, I can kind of see what he's saying, but also there's holes in it here and here and here. Whereas you might look at it and not necessarily see some of the holes, but really
Right.
identify
But
with
that's
it. And neither one of us is necessarily right or wrong because it's an area that just hasn't been sussed out adequately yet.
right. Okay. Well, okay. So that's something that I'd come back to a bunch. Before I was a Christian, I was starting to become intellectually convinced that there was a God
Okay.
because of that type of Jungian archetypes, things like that.
Okay.
The connection in mythological stories. I don't know if this is exactly what you're talking about. Is it related to what you're talking about?
No, but it's interesting. Well, it might be. Like, follow it through though. I'm interested in hearing
Okay,
what you're about to say.
so before I was a Christian, I did a lot of investigating of different religious traditions, and I
Okay.
started to become like, see, it's very similar to stuff Peterson talks about. You know what the collective unconscious is in the Jungian sense? How there's like
Mhm.
stories in the society. It's kind of like we dream collectively together, and those stories all tend to have similar recurring themes that can be actually mapped out on a cognitive level as archetypes. Mythological figures, there's a lot of this in mythology. It's pointing to something. They're not random stories for no reason. They point to similar through lines and
It's like
similar
tacit
ideas.
sociocultural knowledge about archetypes.
Yes.
There's
Now,
like yeah.
one of the arguments that Adam makes, friended, that was why I wanted him on the show, that's
Oh,
sim- that's similar to, what was that? Did you
I
cry
said,
in
oh,
pain?
no, actually, that was, I thought I said, oh, Adam.
Oh,
I,
okay. I was like, it sounded like, Adam.
no, I'm one of the three people I think in this world that gets along with Adam. It's just me and you and probably his wife. And PSA Stitch. There's four of us.
And PSA Stitch.
PSA Stitch.
There's actually, before I forget, there's an interesting, Jonathan Peugeot is his name. You guys might be able to get him on your Heathen Hour because he's got like 30,000 subscribers. He's in
Oh.
Jordan Peterson league of,
The League of Jordan Peterson defenders.
right.
Is
No,
Fred is
no,
Adam
I
the
mean, he's
captain of
on
the
that
league?
level. He's like Yale something or other. He's on that level, but he's on our level too in terms of reach. He's not like a well-known enough figure that you might be able to ask him to be on your show, and he might come on. You'd be interested in what he has to say because it's similar. I haven't looked. I
What's his
haven't
name?
looked. Jonathan Peugeot.
N Thanpageu.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll post a video to you. I was going to do it.
I subscribed to his channel. That way I can
Yeah,
find it.
check him out. He might come on your channel. It
I've heard of
sounds
him.
similar to what you're talking about. I don't know exactly what you're talking about yet, but it sounds similar to stuff that I was investigating. Whereas, not necessarily an intellectual case that there's a God, because that's not really where Peterson is at. If you ask him if God is real, he'll hem and haw, right?
Yeah, and he
And
defines God as essentially a mental archetype. That the ultimate transcendent mental archetype seems to be how he defines God. And in most situations, because he'll define God differently some other times.
right, but
But
I don't
he's
find that disingenuous. I don't think he's being disingenuous when he hems and haws at that answer. I think he
But you
genuinely
can
doesn't
understand how that's
know.
disparate from almost to everybody's colloquial basic understanding day to day. Like, people aren't kneeling down and praying to their internal mental archetype of God, right?
Right, but he's trying. But it's okay. But he's trying to understand it. Take the God. This is.
He's trying to
doing
understand why the concept. He's explaining why the concept of God is important to
neurologically and
individuals and
sociologically.
Right, but he's not defending, or maybe he is. I don't know. He's not defending the existence of a literal supernatural.
No, he's not, because he doesn't necessarily. He's almost exactly where I was before I became a Christian. On any given day, I would answer the question differently. If you said, "Do you believe in God?" and I was like hungover on Sunday morning, I was like, "God, no." It's Christmas time, and there's like, watching the Little Drummer Boy or something. Like, "Do you believe in God?" I'm like, "Of course, it's Jesus." I would answer it differently depending on the mood I was in.
I feel like I do right now. But the mood has struck me.
But so that's kind of where he's at. But he's trying to hyper rationalize it and hyper articulate it. But that's kind of the fault of the aggressive atheist thing, like what we're talking, because they're trying to pin him down on something, and he's just not saying, "I don't know," every single time. He's trying to hyper intellectualize it, but there's no reason to pin him down. How what?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to find the words. Productive is probably the word. How productive in a dialogue is that? If the entire point of the dialogue is for him to defend his position on the conceptualization of a God, if that's the entire point of the conversation, and he can't even pin down what that definition is in any sort of,
well, part of what
then the conversation itself is immediately going to break down, because the subject of the conversation can't even be clearly identified on the onset.
Well, I'm not sure that the premise of the conversation was him defending God. He will defend the utility of religion, and he will defend pro-social benefits of religion and how it may be evolutionary necessary. But he's not there to defend God. That's why it's not really.
I agree that at certain points it definitely was evolutionarily necessary. For sure. Yeah.
Okay, so then you agree with me and Peterson. So what's the deal?
In certain aspects.
And Adam, you're one of me. Adam and Jordan Peterson, you're one of us. Shannon, you're one of us.
I said there. Of course, there was points where developing. Yeah, but the climate, the sociological, economic, social climate is not the same. Like the makeup of the world is not the same now as it was. Just to say something was beneficial is not to say that it's going to be ultimately beneficial in perpetuity forever. Till the end of time.
So you've moved. So now you're not one of us anymore, because Jordan Peterson is. You started out as one of us.
I said I agree that it was beneficial.
Right, but then you pulled a jujitsu. You said I agree, but then let me spell it out. Then you disagree, and then you totally disagree.
Yeah, no, elaboration. Okay. Elaboration is the enemy of people agreeing. That's fair.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what Jordan Peterson is on the exact same thing, and it's actually when you watch the 3 debates, and then we'll come back and talk about it, because that would be really interesting.
Yeah, that would be. I'd love to talk about it. That'd be a great idea. You should come on my channel. You should come on my channel. You could promote your channel on my channel. Yes, please do that.
Absolutely.
We'll do that. I'll watch the debates and we'll talk about it. We'll arrange that. It's probably going to be. It might be another month or two, because I'm booked out. But we can talk about this later. This isn't interesting for other people. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, okay. Jordan Peterson.
So what his position is much more. He's not saying religion was useful. He's saying he's going further than useful, essential. There's something about religion, and he thinks it is still essential. And if we get rid of it, he's afraid of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because the phenomenology of religion is so complex. This is almost word for word, Peterson. The phenomenology of religion is so complex that to figure out which parts are the unnecessary parts would be almost impossible, and which parts do we actually need to survive and cohere. He talks about religion as as narrative structure transmitting ethics, which is kind of inarguable. It's kind of not debatable. That's what it is, sort of.
Yeah. You could probably have an argument, especially with, well, we'll take Christianity out of the mix for the sake of this argument. Like, you can look at other religions. Let's just pretend Christianity is immune. And you can say the exact same thing about all of them by that argument.
Right,
but,
he would.
But there would be, oh, he's pretty Christian-centric. Very, very Christian. It's like blatantly and admittedly so. But, you know, that aside, saying that it's an adequate, effective, and beneficial way to distribute and disseminate ethical systems doesn't automatically mean that those are the best possible ethical systems. It just means that it's an effective way of delivering them as they exist within the structure of that religion. So if the ethical system that religion contains isn't a great ethical system, it may be super effective in delivering that and getting people to administer and adhere to that ethical system, but that doesn't mean that ethical system is good. It just means that it's really good at getting people to adhere to it. Right,
but he's focusing on he's not arguing that the dogmatic aspects are good. He's trying to sift out the parts that we would all tend to agree.
But how? Okay, well, then that's
the atheist.
That's contradictory, though, because you said that it's so complex that you couldn't possibly take the good parts out, and you couldn't even discern the good parts from the bad parts, and then you just said that it's good at the good parts. But if you can discern what the good parts are, then it is possible to dissect, because you just discerned what the good parts are.
Well, so the essential parts.
Secularly. The essential parts. What do you mean by essential? What? It depends on what you mean by essential.
Yeah, okay. That's exactly where they can get annoying. Now, that's exactly where they can get annoying. There was one debate with him and Sam Harris, the first one they ever had, which is like Chinese water torture. I swear to God, it's so
just
awful.
Them defining words for 2 hours.
Yes, it's them defining truth. You want to kill yourself.
I saw that podcast. Yes, that was. I did.
Awful. This isn't that. This gets into some really, really cool territory, and it gets really like interesting on both ends. Even the atheist makes some good points every once in a rare while.
Even the atheist.
Yeah, even he does. Every once in a rare while. Even Sam Harris will say something that's not totally evil. I swear, every once in a while.
Greg, oh my God. Greg, stop it. Don't do that. So, I don't say things like even the Christian.
No, you don't, do you?
No, I don't. I go out of my way not to make. I go out of my way to try not to make generalizations, because I don't.
But it's actually
because I think that they can be detrimental. I really do. I think they can get in the way of conversations. Like for a moment there, I slightly deflated because I thought to myself, wow, that, you know, there's another archetype. We were talking about archetypes or stereotype that Craig potentially buys into. And one of the reasons that I do what I do is so that people don't buy into that. And it indicated to me that maybe you do to a certain degree.
Well, what do you think the stereotypes are? The stereotype of is there actually a stereotype of the evil? I don't know what happens on your end. I'm just playing around when I say stuff like that. I say it to Cirrus. The furthest thing in the world, Cirrus, is evil. Wait, kitty. Kitty's on the laptop. She was about to cut us off. Okay. Good girl.
Oh, I thought you meant it seriously in that context. I'm all for joking around. So if you were saying it in the context of a joke, I apologize that I derailed you.
No, I was just messing around.
Okay.
But let's shift gears for a sec, because I touched a nerve in my jest. What happens on your end? How many, that accusation obviously is something that somebody says for real? Is that what you mean?
Well, oh yeah. Oh my gosh, all the time. I've been called just a plethora of just disgusting things. Just repugnant, horrible things. Just really? Horrible things.
Like what? How? How?
I've been called, let's see, a Nazi. I have been called no better than a member of the KKK. I've been told that I am only relying on my looks. I have been told that I have a fake degree. I have been told that I am not qualified to read science. I have been called a slut. I have been called I have been called a whore. I have been called a heathen who only wants to sin. I have been called a thought. I have been called a roasty. I have been called uh, what is it? A minion of Satan. I have been calling. I don't have time to list off all of the just really a liar, a cultist. I have been called a paid
Okay, so
shill.
what do you think's going down? What's the deal? Is it what's happening? Are people, I don't know, you tell me, what's going on? You think that it's just people have been propagandized against atheists in the public imagination? Or
Yes, and I think to a certain degree, some of that might be some atheists' fault. Like we gravitated towards people who were sensationalistic, but because it's entertaining, and then that started to be perceived as what it meant to be an atheist.
okay, well, I'll tell you from my point of view, and I thought I made this clear in 1 or 2 videos, but when I first got on Twitter, I was amazed. But I split you guys into 2 groups: the dickhead atheists and the cool people atheists.
I hope I'm in the cool people group.
Yeah, of course. Every single person who's been on my channel is in the cool people. Now, there's some who are questionable. I don't know if there'll be cool people atheists, so I would hesitate to invite them on my channel, because I don't want on my channel and them start getting in my face and be like, whatever. I don't know, what do they say? You don't know science, you dumb. I don't know what they say.
Whatever it is that the not cool atheists say.
Yeah, whatever they. Well, when I first got on Twitter, they used to come after me all the time. I was like,
but that goes both ways though. Like that's not unique to atheism. Like you have to know that. Like,
right. Well, it doesn't happen to me anymore. It very rarely. That's how. It very rarely happens. If somebody gets on it starts doing it now, I immediately slam into them, because it happens so infrequently. Like literally, there's 4 times it's happened in the last year that somebody has just showed up on my timeline and been a dick for no reason. 4 times. Never happens to me.
That's
used
fantastic.
to happen to me all the time. Used to happen to me all the time.
Are you engaging in different sorts of dialogues, or do you think that you've just kind of settled in, I guess, like kind of a Twitter social circle that's more respectful and cohesive, and that's kind of what shows up on your timeline because that's what you've gravitated towards and who you interact with the most?
I like to think that, people are like, okay, he's cool, let's but I don't really know.
That's a good thing. You've probably developed a reputation as somebody.
I like to think that I developed a reputation as he's cool and reasonable, don't bother him.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that.
That's probably very true. Because I thought that I can attest to that. You definitely have that reputation, for sure.
Well, then that's good.
Yeah, no, that's what you want, right? You want to be seen as reasonable and easy to talk to.
Yeah, well, no, diplomatic. That's I even get hesitant to if people start getting too negative. I'm hesitant to even be involved, because I don't want to people start
to taint you. You don't want to get stained with the.
Right. Well, because you know how that works. Even if you're not party to it, people start to think that you're. Oh, well, why was he? You know how people are.
Oh, and then they'll make you disavow it too. They'll be like, "Well, you
didn't say, yeah, exactly.
You didn't stand up and say, my friend who like." Somebody will get into, inevitably, because we're in an emotionally charged environment, somebody will get into an argument, a heated argument with somebody that I'm familiar with. And if I don't immediately stand up and say, I ultimately condemn everything that they said, and I think that they're awful people, and everything that the other person said about them is accurate, then immediately that I'm lumped in, well, you're no better than them. It's like, no, right, exactly, it doesn't involve me. I'm not going to be drawn into somebody else's ridiculous dispute.
Right. I mean, I very, very rarely will I even like, I don't even defend Stephanie usually when people are on Twitter. Sometimes I think that people are being unfair to her, but I don't jump in on her behalf. First of all, she doesn't
I've
need me to,
defended.
but second,
No, she doesn't. But I've defended Stephanie before. But I've also come up against Stephanie before too. Like there's times where I'm like,
come up against Stephanie.
Stephanie.
What? Come up against, you're like, Stephanie, shut up. What she does her, should Stephanie do? What do you mean come up against her? I explained that in the,
It's just Stephanie me. Oh yeah, I watched the Richard Carrier video that you did. You said she's
right,
Stephanie.
she's Stephanie.
Yeah,
it's a good quality. Stephanie's awesome, but it's a good quality in the right context. It's like when you watch a political debate, it's called staying on message. She's really good at that without
staying on message. Stop. Sometimes she's fantastic at staying on message, and sometimes she
breaks character.
She can go across the board. Yeah.
Oh, like, really? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've had conversations with her where we were on track, and then like it got like a little bit difficult, or we were talking past each other, and it just went like I was like, whoa, that question came out of left field, and that is not like I didn't even realize that was the subject that we were talking about. Maybe there's more connections going on in her mind that draw them together in her mind mentally, but to me it was just like that came out of left field.
Oh, okay. So you were like talking about something, and then she went into like apologetics or something like that?
Not necessarily apologetics. Because
I've seen her do that. That's kind of what we're talking about. She doesn't do that all the time, but I
think she's given up on apologetics with me. I don't think that she does apologetics with me really anymore.
I'd be surprised if she did, because there's a certain, where I stand, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have to smuggle Jesus into the conversation to try to convince you of whatever that you're not going to be convinced of in this conversation. So there's no point, is what I'm saying.
There's no point. Okay.
In smuggling apologetics into
this conversation. Probably.
Yes. Not. For example, it would just be annoying. Correct?
Or interesting. It might be interesting. Or interesting. Yeah.
It might be interesting.
I'm weird. I'm weird. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really because then you'd get your little like game hat on, and you'd be like,
right. It'd be throwdown time. It'd be Craig versus Shannon throwdown. Beyonce. Apparently, I'm Beyonce now, which I thought was hilarious. I saw that when I was tweeting it out.
Well, you would have been Beyonce originally, but I didn't know how to put the accent on the E. Actually, with the laptop, that's why I made you share. And then I was gonna make you share again on the laptop, but there was controversy over whether you were share or not. And then I can't have a capital C on my laptop. I swear to God, those were both the reasons. I had no idea how to put an accent on the E, and I was like, people are gonna think, "Oh, he's so stupid Christian, can't even put the accent on, doesn't even know Beyonce has an accent." It's spelled with an accent, right?
Yeah,
isn't it? Yeah, okay.
I think it's an accent to goo. Yeah, it's spelled with an accent. I have to go soon, Craig. I'm so sorry. This has been fascinating, but we've been at it for an hour and 45 minutes, and it's almost midnight where I am, and I have to work.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it
was no, it's fine. It was just starting to get fun. So we'll have to do this particular. I'll come on your show at some point in like what, 4 months or something, you said?
No, it'll probably 4 months. Yeah, I'll talk.
I'll be on your show next year.
Thursday. No, I'm. How about November maybe, or late October?
Yeah, that's cool.
November or late October.
Both of those are cool.
That'll give both of us time to watch through the debates again, so that we can really have like an informed conversation about them.
Yeah, and maybe I'll watch all of your debate with Cy 10 Bruggencate.
Oh God, let's not. You really want to talk about that? And it wasn't a debate. Okay. I had a conversation with Cy, and people treated it like it was a debate, and that was fascinating to me. And I even like at the onset, I was like, "This is just going to be a nice conversation." Cy and I have had conversations in DMs, and I thought we'd take it to the streets, I kind of established right from go, this isn't a debate. And people were like, he's killing her. And I'm like, I'm just asking questions because I want to figure out how he thinks. Like, I'm not.
Right. But see, that's why I'm careful as to who comes on the channel, because I don't want that to happen here. And then I'd be really annoyed because I would be annoyed with that. Do you
Well,
see what I'm saying?
yeah, like everybody needs to pick sides, right? And I was like, well, I just wanted to figure out how he thought, and I thought he'd be an interesting person to just have a dialogue with. I didn't
Right.
realize there was a point system involved. I mean,
Well, some people automatically go into that when,
because
like with
that's
Stephanie Richard Carrier, that's a different thing. That is a debate. That is
yeah.
sides. That's what I was in. That she stayed on message. That's all I meant by on message.
Oh yeah,
In
she stayed on message there. Like you could tell that she had a clear strategy going in. Like she'd done research. She had a strategy going in.
right, and that's a good skill in the context of a debate. But in the context of a conversation where you're inviting him on your channel, that's really annoying or obnoxious. It's not actually the point.
Well, for him, that's always the point, I think, because his life is apologetics, because he really believes it. He thinks he wants to save you. He wants to convince you, and he thinks that
Right,
he
but
has.
it's not very convincing. That's the
No,
part of the problem.
It's not.
I mean, it's not convincing at all.
Because, well, it doesn't answer the questions. In order for it to be convincing, it would have to answer the questions that I had, and it doesn't. It doesn't even address them. It's just an assertion. It's like an in your face assertion with a couple steps and then back to that assertion again. It doesn't. And then if you want to talk about the questions that you have, especially as an ex-Christian, he won't, because he says he doesn't do Bible study with atheists. I'm like, well, a lot of the questions that if you really want to convert somebody or reconvert somebody, then the best thing that you can do is try to help them reconcile the issues they have with that book. Like, if you can't do that, if you're just going to assert that God, that it's like you're not even asserting the Christ. Even if his apologetic is correct, it still doesn't lead to the Christian God. Like, even if you grant him all the premises of the apologetic that he uses, the presuppositional logic can't exist without God. You can't
right,
apologetic.
But it plays out like a scam. It plays out like a let me just reroute you back to the same thing. Let me reroute you back to the same. Let me reroute. It doesn't. I don't see how it would ever work. I would be interested to see if he does. Like, if you watch the epistemology thing, that sometimes works in the course of a conversation, but it's much more of a gentle, like,
well, look at Dan.
Let's talk.
Have you talked to Objectively Dan before?
Yeah, I have an interview with him, 2 hours long.
It worked for him. He deconverted.
I know that.
Because of street epistemology, which is amazing. Like, that's crazy.
Well, but that the approach is more user friendly in terms of it doesn't start a quarrel, or it doesn't. Even if you're wrong, you're going to get people to agree with you a lot more readily in a one-on-one conversation if you're easygoing and you win them over using classic diplomacy, right? Even if you're wrong, if I were trying to convince you of something wrong, like I don't know, what's something wrong? Like, Canada is better than the U.S. When
that's
USA
right.
rules.
That's 100%.
No, that's
accurate.
wrong. No, that's wrong.
That was an accurate.
No, USA.
Statement. Let's start from there. Let's start from Canada is 100% better.
No, Canada is like, okay. So
poutine,
we
have beer that actually has alcohol in it.
Beer that. Wait, what? What does that mean? Beer with alcohol?
You guys drink weak ass beer. That's what that means. Your beers are only like, I don't know, like 3% or something stupid.
Why? What's Canada? Foster's? Or no, that's Australia. What's Canada beer? There's Moosehead?
What's Canada?
I don't even remember.
That's one of them. Yeah, actually, that brewery is just down the street from me. Moosehead's from Nova Scotian beer. So is Keith's.
I haven't drank in 15 years, so I don't. Wow. I'm going off of memory. Yeah.
Blue.
I don't know.
Labatt's.
I don't remember.
Labatt's. Moosehead. Keith's.
Moosehead, I remember. Moosehead, I always remember being overrated. Like, everyone in my high school was like, Moosehead is the best beer ever.
Our hockey team is called the Mooseheads here in Halifax. That's the name of our hockey team. They named them after the beer. Shit you not.
Wow.
Halifax Mooseheads, yeah.
So guess who's coming on the show Friday, by the way? Big announcement.
Who?
Kyle.
Oh, not Kyle. Not Kyle Curtis.
Kyle. one half of the non sequitur show.
Kyle
Yes.
Curtis.
You got your brains and you got your beauty. First I did the brains, now I do the beauty.
Kyle's fun. Kyle's funny. Kyle has a way better sense of humor than me. You and Kyle get along great.
Did you see his he did a comedy? Did you see his comedy thing?
Yeah, he was a stand-up comedian. It was hilarious.
That
And he
was
talks about
really
his girlfriend, and it was hilarious to me.
Oh, I didn't catch that. I didn't see that. I
Yeah.
don't remember that.
He posted his old live stand-up, and he was talking about like his girlfriend and stuff. And it was back when he was still like in the closet and living a straight life. And obviously it like informed his comedy bit. And I was like, whoa. Because I've only ever known Kyle like as out.
Right.
That was crazy. Like, holy smokes.
Yeah, I might actually talk about that with him because I was in an improv troupe in the city in New York for 2 years. Yeah, for like 2.5 years or something.
That is cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was really when I was in my 20s.
That is awesome. Oh my gosh, great. It's midnight. I'm so sorry.
So let's wrap this up. Tell everybody where to find you. Say goodbye. This was awesome.
Great. I'm enjoying this conversation. I could talk to you for another 2 hours, but I have to work in the morning.
I kind of figured that this is how it would go down. That we just like start talking and
I know, and we could do it.
Feels like we're just like hanging out, having coffee, sitting at like.
You should come to Faithless Forum. I don't know if you're anywhere near Dallas. When we have Faithless Forum in April, you should just come and hang out with us. You'd have so much fun. Get to Dallas. Come to Faithless Forum.
Dallas is actually pretty far.
Is it? I'm flying there from Nova Scotia. You can get there.
I don't know. Maybe. Who's there? What atheists?
Me and Paul and Drew are going to be there for sure.
Do you think Drew's
Dan?
Okay.
Drew runs it. Drew organizes it. And so does KC and Godless Engineer. And Zod was there last year. Kyle's going.
Cool. All the cool atheists. All the anybody atheists.
And Holy Kool-Aid and Telltale Atheists. There's a pretty large Paul Gia. Paul is coming.
Cool.
There's a pretty massive group of us that's going. All the cool kids will be there. You should come. You'd have fun.
I'll bring Stephanie. I'll bring Stephanie.
Oh, that would be so much fun. Yes. Oh my God. You and Stephanie should definitely come. That would be amazing. Yes, please. Yes, please come. But yeah, I've got the Terry Fox run is tomorrow. You guys probably don't have the Terry Fox run there.
No.
I gotta take my kid to that too.
All right. So sign off. Tell us where to find you and why are we looking?
Why are you looking?
Tell us where and why. Where and why.
My name is ShannonQ, and I have a channel called ShannonQ, and I do videos about what it's like to be an atheist, cultist, Illuminati propagandist shill who only does this for the massive amount of money that I get paid. And I don't listen to anybody when they talk, because I don't care what anybody says, because my mind's already made up. And I defend communists and Nazis. So come check
babies. And
I eat babies. And I eat babies. So it's a good time. You should come hang out.
That is the selling point. It sounds fun. Fun. It's all doom and gloom and
we talk about how I can't have morals. And that how nothing makes sense, and I don't have any foundation for knowledge. That's essentially what my channel's all about.
Cool.
That's all.
Cool. Sounds like a good time. Sounds like a good time. And the war on Christmas. Don't forget you probably war on Christmas too.
No, you can only say happy holidays on my channel. No, I don't care. I say Merry Christmas. Christmas is great. Christmas is awesome. I don't know why anybody would care if somebody says Merry Christmas. You can also say Happy Kwanzaa, say Happy Hanukkah. Why would it? Whatever.
It's a thing here in America.
Is it really though? Is it really? Really?
Yes.
So you say if you say Merry Christmas to somebody, they just smack you across the face and you're like, shut your mouth. Don't you say Merry Christmas.
But there's a lot of I don't know. It plays out differently in different places, but there's definitely pressure on people to say Happy Holidays as opposed to Merry Christmas. And then there'll be there's a lot of like fight against public displays of harmless religious iconography at Christmas time. Things that are not necessarily some places, some context. I'm like, okay, I can understand there. Like a courtroom or something. But on a street, you have to remove like a manger.
I
That's a
don't think
little
that it
bit
should
more.
necessarily be in the public square, like on like a, well, I don't know what the equivalent is, but in the legislature here, like, well, they'll decorate, but they don't put up any specifically religious
Right, but what about like a
effigies.
street corner? Right, what about
No,
just
I'll
like a
take what you
random?
want. Like, yeah, whatever. If you own a business and you want to put a manger out front or like, why not? Like, it's your business. If people are offended by it, then they just won't go in the business. If it's your house, then it's your friggin' house. Do whatever you want. Nobody here cares about that stuff.
Right.
I don't know. You guys are different.
Yeah, it's
Everybody.
very different. It's very different. But anyways, okay,
Oh,
so are we
yeah.
signing off?
Yeah, I really do have to go. It's like legit midnight now. I have to go to bed.
All right, Miss Shannon, thank you for coming. This was fun. This was exactly how I thought it would be. And anytime you want to come and prattle on about whatever it is you want to prattle on about,
Yeah.
drop me a DM and say I feel like being on the show today, and I'll
Awesome.
make
It
a
was fun.
space.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye, Shannon.
Bye.
Sweet.
Oh, I think you're still live, guy.